if you'd be so kind. And who wants to break the ice and ask the first question? First question, please. Yes, seems someone in the centre row. Please raise your hand so that we can give you a microphone. Yes, there's a question. Please stand up if you'd be so kind as well.
For the director, Nicholas Jarecki, at least in the early going, your film is obviously a dramatic thriller, but it's structured rather like a comedy. In other words, you have the Richard Gere in a jet plane, but he's one deal short of a cash flow. You have him as the family man who segues off to his mistress. Was that, I presume, totally conscious, and would that sort of sum up the film in many ways for you? It's an ironic thriller, in other words.
Well, so everyone, here's the question. So I actually think it's a very nice observation.
You're totally wrong, but it was a nice observation.
No, I think there's some merit in it because I'm a great fan of Woody Allen, and even in his darkest films, you see a great levity and a great humor. And my mother told me two things about making movies. She doesn't make them, but she watches a lot of them. She said, you have to cast extremely beautiful stars, and people want to see that, and that also you have to have humor. Even in the darkest moments in real life, there's always humor. So I like what Woody does in his movies. He puts characters in extreme circumstance, but we're able to laugh and to sort of say, oh man, I can't believe she's going through that. So I'm happy that you see humor in it, and I think the actors play it really well. They play a whole range of emotions in the moment. So I'll take it.
Siguiente pregunta.
Sí.
Sí, póngase.
Please stand up. Yes, next question. I would like to know, yes, if this is at work, can you hear me? I'd like to know, the director, could you tell me whether it's been a film which is an opportune moment due to the real estate bubble, which is causing havoc and drama throughout the world, and even more so here in Spain, by the way, just in case you didn't know, whether it's a film, whether it's a love story within an atmosphere of big business deals and whatever that brings along with it. At the end of the day, what you as a director have wanted to do while presenting the film, I want to congratulate both of the great interpretations by Richard Gere. I'm asking you whether you're thinking about the Oscar because of your interpretation of your role too. And by the way, I want to congratulate both of the actors, Susan as well as Richard, for their portrayal. Okay, director. Quiero.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Going so fast.
The translation is incredible. I'm wondering could you repeat the question?
Yes. What was your intention of making this film apart from the business deal and he talked about the real estate bubble and so on and so forth, which is hitting Spain very hardly.
The intention first and foremost was to create an entertainment that you would enjoy watching. For me, what's entertaining is, especially in this type of film, identification with flawed character, because I think we all have flaws. It's what makes us human, and for me, I enjoy to watch a film where you can see these great actors take you through that range of human experience, and you can identify with what they're going through, no matter how dark or difficult the circumstance. With regards to the housing bubble, definitely that was an influence. I began writing the script in 2008, 2009, during the implosion of our American national economy, shortly thereafter the global economy, thank you to the credit default swaps. There were, John Paulson is an American billionaire who inspired this character a little bit. He made billions of dollars betting against housing. In a year, I think he made $3 billion. So it was something on my mind. It was that seemed to be the center of gambling at that time. you can gamble in so many different ways in finance, but at that moment, everybody thought houses were a good bet, including the average working American, because for some strange reason, they thought that it was a good idea. Everybody should be lent a lot of money that they had no way to pay back to buy houses because they were told the houses would keep going up forever. A similar thing happened in Iceland, and now they'll be poor for generations because of the actions of a few fishermen who were told that they should become investment bankers. So this happens globally, and it's definitely something that inspired what we were doing.
Sí, por favor, dejen con flash.
Please stop saying, taking photos. I don't know whether you remember the question, Mr. Gere, about are you thinking about the Oscar? There was a question asked earlier. No,
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Is it on? Okay. No, I've never thought about the Oscar. I mean, we just wanted to make a movie that first of all, it was a really good script, and it on its own merits, it was a wonderful script. Now, when you take into account that it was about a subject that the whole world is dealing with right now, of course, it makes it more important. When you take into account that it has these wonderful, rich characters, all of them, in this movie, that it becomes even more important for us as actors to make this movie. But I think we all went into this thinking, well, this could be something that is relevant in our world. It could maybe be somewhat of a game changer, but it's also a good movie. I mean, it had this incredible energy and drive to it. So it's also a thriller. So it's quite peculiar, I think, in this day and age to have a movie that fulfills all those requirements.
Sí, no sé si puede controlar, hay un pequeño zumbido, no sé si se puede controlar. Adelante, por favor. Sí, hola.
Hi, I would like to know when you prepared the script, or whether the actors, when you read the script, it says, well, allow me, well, whether you thought at any moment, I think he's saying, you said, no, this can't finish this way. These types of characters have to finish up in jail, if they deserve everything that happens to them, and so on and so forth.
I don't think we ever questioned when we were shooting it what the ending would be, but we still argue about what happens after the last cut. This is still an argument that goes on.
Which I really enjoy seeing them argue about it, principally.
Susan just doesn't understand this movie at all, and she obviously doesn't understand men and women, and anyhow.
I never would have gone to that dinner if he didn't sign the paper.
He didn't sign the paper.
Now, after the dinner,
he didn't
maybe
sign
he
the
was
paper.
so
He's
charming
rope but dope.
that we
you guys know, do you know who
reconsider
Cassius Clay
once
is?
we go
Muhammad
on
Ali.
vacation.
Muhammad
But
Ali, he'd go
otherwise,
up
he
against
signed
the ropes,
the paper.
and he would cover up, right?
He signed
and his
it.
opponent would just keep punching away,
I wouldn't
and
go to that
eventually
dinner
they
without
get
him
tired.
signing it.
And then he would come out.
I would go to the press. I would tell them.
Knockout.
I'm sorry, I'm not
So
going down
this
for
is the way
him.
it is, and we've been going down this now for weeks and weeks. This is a problem we have.
So don't ask us any more of those questions or we'll just get so upset.
But also, does anybody have a list of the people in jail from the financial crisis? Let's see who's on it. Bernie Madoff. That's over. Was it cut off?
Yeah, but there were ones before. There was Icahn and a few people who ended up in jail. But this has not been a situation where our judicial system worked well. And I don't know if it's the case in Europe, but in the U.S. it did not work well. And there are very few of these people who lost multi-billions and billions and billions of dollars of other people's money, ended up in jail.
Some of them ended up in government.
They were hired by our president, unfortunately, to actually run the system.
Well,
But did that happen here? I mean, did many in Europe end up in jail over these crises? I'm asking you. No?
And, all the people from Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers, the banks that collapsed, lost billions. There was an article within 12 months they were all employed at other companies back in senior leadership positions at similar salaries.
And got bonuses, a lot of them, too.
Allá atrás, por favor.
Yes, at the back there. Okay. Good morning. Congratulations to all of you. One for Richard Gere.
Back there?
Aquí estoy.
Over here, right back here. I've got to record. I'm doing the recording at the same time. Okay. Richard Gere, you've got to dance, basically a dance with feelings, with businesses, with justice. It's a character which is a complex character. With which of those would you keep at the end of the day? With those three different things that I've just mentioned in your character, what would you keep at the end of the day of that character?
I mean, look, when you play a character like this, you basically have two choices. You play the villain with a capital V, and I think it becomes cliched and not very interesting. Or you play a human being, and so the choice that we had with all these characters was to play human beings, with all the flaws that we all have, not monsters, not sociopaths. The thing. It actually goes back to the very first question. I think it was really important to find what was charming in this character, to find the Bill Clinton in this character, who finds a way to swim through a lot of problems, and in the end is a winner. This story wouldn't work with a loser. It is something that always will find a way to win, and with most of these guys, they find a way to win. But all the characteristics you mentioned, I think, are necessary to tell anyone's story.
Hello.
La segunda.
The second question would be for Susan Sarandon. Would you have liked to have more play, because we don't see you enough in the film? If that's what he's saying.
Thank you. Well, maybe you'll see us on vacation after I've wiped out his fortune and we go away to Rebello. We can do a sequel. But of course you always would like to be more. But I think that the character was written to serve Richard's story, and I was happy that the family was part of the equation, because most of the time in financial stories you don't know what's going on at home. So I thought it was very interesting of Nick to have the whole world closing in on Richard's character, not just the financial world and the police after him, but also the family disintegration, because you never get a chance to see what's going on with those guys' families. I'd be very curious to know, when Bernie Madoff was set out, what was the conversations and what was happening in that family. Obviously, there were lots of repercussions with that. But thank you for missing me.
I have to say, I miss her too.
I don't miss her at all.
No, but in the editing room, there's nothing we didn't use. In the editing room, there are many other scenes that were cut down or cut out. But whenever it was Susan, I was going, don't we have any more, damn it? So that will be featured prominently in the sequel. Arbitrage 2, Arbitragier.
Arbitrage 2.
But Susan does an interesting thing in this, because she is kind of the strongest moral voice in this, and the closest that the character gets to comeuppance in this story. At the same time, she fought for that and for the strength of her character. This is not a woman you could walk over at all at any point in this movie, but someone who's rich and complex and profound in many ways. But at the same time,
just stop there. That was really good.
But at the same time, was perfectly willing to acknowledge that these women are caught in the system as well. And her proximity to wealth and influence is something that she doesn't want to give up either. So every character in this story, from the cop to Susan's character, everyone is flawed and complex.
Hi. Hello. This question is for all of you. First of all, congratulations for the movie.
She's speaking in English.
This is the second time that you guys are married in a movie. I want to know how was working together again. It's a gift for us who love you. And then if there was a very complicated scene that was difficult to play, because it's a hard movie in these times. Congratulations.
Do you want to start or should I start?
Thank you.
Well, I was just thinking about this as you brought it up. I think as every character came in, we rehearsed a lot. And Vic and I worked a lot together, weeks before anyone else came in. Another actor would come in. We work a week with that actor coming in, just very easily getting to know each other, making a lot of tea, talking. It was just the way I like to work. I don't remember, Susan and I didn't work much at all, because it was just like, the assumption was that we knew how to do this, and we knew instinctively who these characters were. We would find it on camera. And it's really, from my point of view.
You know, when you're working with somebody, you want to work with people that are better than you, that make you better, that keep you awake. And Richard's one of those people. But he also is really great because he sees the whole picture. Sometimes when you work with someone, they're so concerned with their part that they can't really discuss how it works in the whole. So it's always an advantage to be with somebody who makes the whole picture better because they understand. He could be a great director, you know, because he understands how things pay off at the end. But we were also lucky because we have a lot of history together. We're survivors in New York from way back. So that part of it we don't have to worry about, you know, and I don't have to worry that I'm going to be too strong because I know he can hold his own. And so when you have that freedom, it's really fun. If you have to be in a scene and worrying about the other actor or you know, it's not as much fun. So
there's also this case, I think, that when you play people that have been married a long time, and I look at my own life and long relationships, you deal with people differently. You're not always in their face. Things happen in motion. And they're filled, and there's a lot of stuff going on, but it's rare that you're pointing at the drama of your lives as it's being lived. It's tangential. It's deep, but it's really very rare that it's head-on, that you have a relationship. Susan and I are strong enough and know each other well that a lot of this movie was tangential until we got to that last scene, and she forced that to happen. But I think that's part of the acceptance, the belief that you get as an audience is that shorthand of, yeah, these people really know each other. They are fully in their own skin in the same space.
But I want to do something next where we don't know each other. And we just meet, and we're both bad guys and flirting. That's my next. I'm looking for that script if anyone has it.
You know, I would just to say what was cool for me was, you know, actually, believe it or not, I don't even know if you remember, but Susan was the first person I approached for the entire film. And then, you know, I had just nothing at the time. And she saw the script and liked it, and, you know, is well known for taking chances on first-time filmmakers, as I suppose Richard now will, and you'll be receiving many scripts from people who never made a movie. But, you know, but so when we finally all got together, once Richard saw the script, and then I said, well, you know, how about Susan? He immediately was so happy, and same with Susan. And we did do a few days in my loft together. And when they sat down, they had such a fluency with each other. You know, it was like just coming right back into a long dialogue that had been going on 20 years, you know, and it was great to see that chemistry.
We can disagree with each other without thinking someone's going to run crying from the room or get nasty or something, which is important because when you're working on something, I like to throw out lots of ideas, but they're not necessarily the answer, but it just starts a dialogue that you come up with like a third thing that might be it. But sometimes you can't even discuss things because people get so defensive, and then it's really hard to have a creative process for me.
Yeah, no, there was a sense of trust in the room, and that we could listen to each other, and that relationship really helped. It helped me a lot because I was my first film. So
he's one of the better marriages I've had, definitely.
Yeah, I could say the same, actually. That's true. How many times have you been married? How many?
I've actually never married anyone I had children with, but I meant unions.
Unions.
Yeah.
And you could say goodbye to me, right?
Yeah.
It only has to happen in 2 or 3 month increments.
Yeah.
Hola, buenos días. Me gustaría...
Hi, good morning. Susan Sarandon and Richard Gere. I would like to ask you, you've talked about the film, talking about corruption, economic corruption, and sentimental corruption that the power generates in these characters. I would like to ask you whether you've defended causes very powerfully, both of you, whether you consider that we have to set up priorities in order to ascend economically and to leave behind bodies in your wake. Is that necessary?
No, why would it be necessary? I think what the essential... I've had this argument with very powerful Republicans. Now, I don't know if you know American politics, but we have two parties. The Republicans are basically ones that worry about money, and the Democrats are the ones who worry about how we take care of poor people. and that's a big dynamic between the two. So the argument I had with these Republicans was that Americans don't hold anything against people who are successful and make a lot of money. What hurts us is the extraordinary greed of the people who are successful and make a lot of money. And they create a situation where it is zero-sum. The universe is not zero-sum. There's enough for everybody, way more than is necessary. But the way that the financial world and the rich people play it, they've made it a zero-sum game. And they have incredible joy in that it's been structured as a zero-sum game. The reality is not that. So we have to change the rules. We have to take a deep breath and say, well, we won't play by those rules anymore. It's insane.
I think that everyone wants to provide for their family, make sure their family is happy and safe and has as much physical and money and place and food and luxuries. But the definition of family is different between Democrats and Republicans. Democrats tend to see a broader definition of what family is. And Republicans, again, I know some very good Republicans, but it is a different philosophy, and I think we just need to regroup and rethink our philosophy of prioritizing everything. And it's not just a political question. It's really, in the United States,
it's an interior question.
It's an interior question. In the United States, it's become so polarized that we're not dealing really with what is at the basis of the question, and that's a philosophical one. And it would be good to have compassion, as the Dalai Lama talks about, and to talk about what it is that needs to be philosophically changed as we go through this very short life that we lead. Does that answer anything that you've asked? Okay.
There's one thing about this movie, and look, it's in the world of finance, but it doesn't function as storytelling because it's about finance. And as I worked with this, it's about relationships. It's about seeing into the interiors of people and what are their motivations, what is it they want, how do they define happiness. And this is the kind of guy, the closer I got to him, it wasn't about money. I think this guy would be fine without the money. He wants to live comfortably, but the money's not enough. It's the gamble. It's the game. It's a very boyish thing of gambling and being on the edge of losing all the time. This guy's good enough that he rarely loses. We see him in a moment where he loses badly on a couple of things in a row. But I honestly don't think it's about the money. And I think that's probably true with most of the people who are multi-billionaires. In the end, it's not about the money. It's about the game. It's about playing. It's about gambling.
I don't know who these guys' mothers, how did they raise them that they turned out that way? I mean, women can't just completely be wiped of responsibility for the way the world is being handled by all these men. I think as mothers we have to raise better sons, however we do that.
And daughters.
And daughters, but except that there aren't enough daughters in powerful positions that are making these decisions. It's definitely the guys that have most of the power in the world. But so women too, sure, but I think especially our sons. Because having two sons, they don't start out that way. I don't know what happens.
Hola, buenos días.
Hi, good morning. I want to ask a couple of questions. The ambition is a concept. Is it a positive American concept and a Western concept? But that fine line between greed, I think in this financial crisis, I think we've gone beyond that fine line. For you, I would like you to tell us what's happened. How far was ambition so good? And reality is that the citizens have understood and they've pardoned the crisis to a certain extent, because they've understood that ambition and greed is almost the same thing. That would be my first question. And the second question is for Richard Gere and also for both of you, about the physical construction of your characters. You move, you look very, like in American Gigolo, very stylish, like many years ago, and I'd like to know, where do those movements when you walk around on the screen that make the characters so realistic? And congratulations, because you do it very well, by the way, just in case you wanted to know.
Something about the greed and the ambition thing. I think that Richard hit upon it. It's an addictive game of power, even more than greed, because certainly most of these people have enough. You know, it's so, I don't see it as much, it is greedy to keep taking and taking and taking, but the real core of it is, when you see that fabulous scene between Richard and Graydon Carter, you can see how much fun they're having at trying to outdo the other. So for me, and Wall Street too, also dipping a little bit into that world, it was clear that it's an addiction to power and to the game. And now you can talk about your sexy walk or greed and ambition.
Should I get up and show you my sexy walk?
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
No, there's a wonderful.
Yes, everyone's saying yes. I'm sorry.
I could probably make some money on that. I was just thinking.
You have made some money.
I have, yeah. In Tibetan Buddhism, there's a realm that one could be born into. There's a mindset. It's called hungry ghosts. And hungry ghosts are creatures that they're close to the hell realms, and they're always suffering. And part of the suffering is they have little mouths and huge stomachs, and they can never be satisfied. They can never get enough in. And that's one of the hell zones for a human being. That's about a mindset. And certainly that's something to be pitied. It's horrific, the kind of suffering that kind of mentality goes through. I get a lot of questions about these guys are monsters and the bad guys and all. I really don't see anybody as bad guys. I really don't see anyone who's outside of redemption. I do see a lot of possibilities. The talent and the drive of a lot of these guys who have made a career out of making money or accumulating power, if that same talent and ability was turned towards something that was good for the entire planet, I mean, what an extraordinary thing that might be.
And some people do that have made an enormous amount of money.
Well, you see something with Gates, but Gates had to make a turn. There was a time when Bill Gates, you couldn't get any money. You couldn't get $5 from him for a charitable cause. He says, I'm too young to give it away. And whatever happened within his family and within himself changed. There's no one who's had a larger effect on the health of this planet than Bill Gates and his foundation. So it is possible for people to change and become responsible. And that's what's necessary for us to move forward as a successful species on this planet.
But I think there are bad guys. I think the Dick Cheneys of the world. I'm not looking very quickly for that to change. But I think that people without any empathy at all that don't seem to care.
No, I don't think that's true, though. You look at anyone and you look at their families, they're empathetic, empathic with their own people, with their own tribe. It's tribal thinking. If you had someone who just even having a dog that they could be kind to, then you say, wow, this is really no place you can go.
But I think there are some people who, for whatever reasons, don't have.
That people do have, and there's no one I've ever met on this planet that doesn't have the seeds of that.
I think some people are chemically imbalanced, and they don't.
Well, that's mental
No.
illness. That's
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah. I
But
think
that's not inherent in who they are.
But you know, on this track, they just got me thinking. I recently played. I hadn't played in a long time. I played Monopoly, the famous board game, and I was reading the rules that the Parker brothers wrote however long ago, and it says in there, remember, in order to win, you must not just accumulate money, you must make all the other players bankrupt. With an exclamation point. Like, it's exciting.
That's
Let's
the
bankrupt
zero-sum
the other
game.
players. So I think the thing is, you know, with the American economic problems, many ways I think occurred because people in power and around, they became divorced from what they were doing. You know, the idea of all business, hopefully, is to make the world a better place for ourselves and our friends and our community. And so we have all the iPads and cameras and photographs and things that are being used in here to communicate that we like. So that's where we're supposed to focus making them. Well, the abstraction that occurs moving money around, which there's a reason for it. You need to move it to where it needs to go to make the stuff we want to make. But when it becomes too abstract, and when Robert Miller enters the delusion and doesn't listen to his wife, you know, suggesting that there's a lifeline, or even when she goes into the delusion and too much focus in helping and an idea of oneself, when it becomes about ego, and I remember from rehearsal, we talked about the hungry ghost notion. That's when it becomes divorced, and there's all types of way of divorcing, whether it's going in the hermetically sealed limo through the streets of New York, shopping only with the personal shopper, flying in the private jet. You know, it's all ways of isolating oneself and becoming out of touch. And, you know, that's where I think it heads, and where we got to come back and talk about it as we're doing now. He has the best walk in the business. Just why do you think I hired him?
There was a Brazilian, I mean, years and years and years ago, there was a Brazilian reviewer, and he this is translated from the Portuguese, but he says he has the walk of a garden swan. I never quite knew what that meant, but I thought it was a wonderful phrase.
maybe they're different in Brazil, the swans.
By the way, it was something we actually worked on photographically. I mean, I'm not saying we enhanced Richard's walk. It is just naturally swan-like. But what we did do is we wanted this sense of a glide of the whole movie.
Yeah,
that the character was steady cam gliding through.
Was that the whole movie has to be in motion. That this is still a guy who's vital and has another deal in him, and a deal after that, and there's no sense of stopping. Nick's original concept was closer to someone, this was his last deal. And this was an end game for him. And I didn't think you could really, you lose the power of the story if it's built in that there's going to be an end point. This is someone I can't imagine is ever going to stop until he has the heart attack or the stroke. And but part of that was the energy of always pushing. And as we played it, and as Nick refined his cut, it became more and more of that, of always in motion, always moving, always shark-like. And I think it's part of the real ticking clock of this movie was the rhythmic aspect of that.
And I think, by the way, that's in an early rehearsal with Susan. It all knit together. She said, you know, hey, why don't I want to go away somewhere? Let's say I want to take him away. I want to take him to Europe. I want to leave the life behind, you know. And then Richard was saying, well, this is not one last job. Like, there is no last job. So it all went in that way. I think it's right, because it's the rush of this staying alive. It's the risk. I mean, why else, you know, taking these big bets? You're never going to make more than 8%, 10% being safe. So let's not be safe. Let's go to the edge, because the edge feels alive to the hungry ghost, to borrow your phrase. So that's all came from the work, and it was great.
Bien, allá atrás, por favor.
At the back there, it seems. Stand up.
Susan Sarandon, Richard Gere, you seem to be very pleased with the script. I remember when you were kind of the young lions of the scene and became gradually big, almost.
The old
lions.
Careful.
Well, they're making a very
Careful.
nice issue of your age in this film. Well, I'm curious. I mean, there is sometimes a kind of presumption that the scripts tend to get less interesting with years, and it seems like this is not the case always. My question is, when you look back through your careers this far, is there a kind of straight line of good parts that's been offered to you, or is it a curve that goes a little up and down and surprises you the whole time? What does it look like?
How old are you?
Older than you think.
Yeah,
I remember Joe. Let's say that.
Good. Okay. I see myself.
I wasn't born yet when Joe was made.
So true. I see myself as a character actor, and so I've gone in all different directions. And I mean, Dead Man Walking wouldn't have happened if I hadn't found the book. No one gave me that. I found it and I developed it. So now, lately, I've been playing a lot of supporting parts. I think the last movie that was completely about me was Bernard and Doris with Ralph Fiennes. So I don't know, trying to find things. I've been offered something that's the main part again that's going in Canada. So it has gone up and down and all around, but never repeating. I try not to do the same character. There are some people that have so much charisma and are so interesting that they play themselves over and over. I'm not. So I play different people. And so sometimes they're big and sometimes they're small. Sometimes they're new directors. Sometimes they're franchises. Sometimes they work. Sometimes they don't. But what I learned once when I was in England years ago was that actors act. And so there's not really any point in trying to have a strategy. You just find what's interesting on stage and theater, small parts, big parts, whatever. So that's kind of been, my career's been fairly unorthodox, but I'm still here, so I have no complaints.
Yeah, hello, I'm here. This is for the director?
Oh, wait a minute, Richard didn't answer his career.
That's all right. I would have said the same thing.
Oh, copycat.
No,
you guys agree?
I better not. I don't want anyone to think we'd ever agree on anything, so I better say something. When I won, it was 5 years ago that I won it was 5 years ago. Boy, it goes so quickly. There was a film made, and it was a retrospective of almost all the parts I had done. I personally, when I got the award here 5 years ago, and I found it incredibly moving, just kind of watching myself grow up on film. And I was very pleased with a lot of the choices that I had made in the films that I had been offered and had made. And I don't see the process changing. I'm kind of amazed as Susan is that I'm still working, that people are still offering really wonderful scripts and situations that I want to be part of. This is my 5th decade of making movies, and I never thought that was going to happen. Pretty amazing. But as Susan said, I never set out with a design of what my career was going to be. I've just been incredibly fortunate that there have been rich parts with terrific people that have come my way. So I hope it continues.
What somebody had here?
Yeah. Hello. My question is for the director. I wanted to know something about the cop, the character of the cop.
That Tim Roth plays.
Yes. I found it very interesting. I think he is the great loser, and great loser in the movie, in the story. But I wanted to know if you were trying to send some other kind of message through the image of the cop, because he seemed to me like somebody who was outraged at the super rich, was prepared to go that extra length to frame them. So if there was something like, if you wanted to give the impression through the cop that there were people out there who are outraged legitimately so, and who are prepared to go that extra mile. Like the cop, for example, he cheats. Is that it, or am I?
So it's an interesting question. I'm sorry Tim Roth's not here with us. He's filming right now, playing Prince Rainier, interestingly enough. The performance that he gives in the film, I think, is terrific. And it's really came out of the rehearsal process. It's quite different than what I had written, really to our great benefit. I had written this kind of staid, Javert, put it all together in the background. And, Tim read the script, and he said he was in. And then I said, okay, let's rehearse. He said, all right, he'd be there. But we hadn't really met yet because it all happened at the last moment. And so he came in, and we just went right to work in 3 days. And he came and he said, okay, no. He said, what am I doing here? He said, no. I'm not going away. I'm going to pick up the kid. I've got the kid. I'm going to take the daughter in. Let's throw the daughter in the cell with the black kid. Let's see how she feels about that. Let's put her, the whole him picking up her in the town car. That came from him and Susan saying, shouldn't we have a physical confrontation? Boom, he's right in her face. So Tim brought this relentless, pit bull-like energy to that character, Detective Breyer. And I love it. And I think it works extremely well in the film because really, if you have a character as powerful as Robert Miller, you have to have an antagonist that has a reasonable shot of bringing him down. Otherwise, you're watching a rigged fight, And so it's not as fun. And so Tim brought that intensity to it. Now, that was definitely an idea in the back of my mind. When I had written the original draft, he says, he's going to walk because he's on CNBC? He portrays – one thing that was interesting was Tim, when we did the costume process, he said, I only want one suit for the movie. And then he wore it all through the thing. He never changed his clothes. But the only thing he had is he wanted a luxury Rolex. And so I never really asked him what that meant, but I kind of got it, which was, he like we all do in various degrees coveted. We all want these things, these luxury item brand ideas that are sold to us, fine hotels, jets. Most people are just trying to keep the lights on, but that's in our culture. So we all want that, but he sees a perversion of it. He himself is perverse and changes it around, and that leads to corruption. The idea is not only like the rich are different or evil or something like that. No. The idea was to show that there's corruption everywhere, and people playing to get each other who will stop at nothing. And without consideration, where does that lead?
The end justifies the means.
The end justifies the means. Well, something Susan said, we all discussed again an idea in rehearsal, people doing the wrong things for the right reasons. So a lot of intention of, Robert Miller wants it to be right. Ellen Miller wants it to be right. The daughter wants it to be right. They all do. Jimmy, the girlfriend's trying to make her way. Leticia Costa's character, and so the cop, he's trying to do what he thinks is right. Does he finesse it, as the judge asked him? Will he shave some corners? It's interesting. When I was writing the script, actually, I had a plot problem. And this is where, some of the behavior comes from, just to confess to you the process. So I called my lawyer and I said, okay, I got this. Now, I wrote myself into a little bit of a corner here. What do you think could happen? And he said, well, maybe someone in the movie could change some stuff around. It doesn't all necessarily have to be by the book. Maybe something's manipulated. And I said, well, you really think the police would do that? And he said, what are you, an idiot? It happens every day. Look at O.J. Simpson. So it's just an attempt to be honest about what we do.
I was just thinking about the scene that I had with Tim and seeing Tim's performance. Now, Tim is very different in the scene with me in my office.
he restrains himself.
He restrains himself.
Which is, I always wonder that about police. Why? What's the difference if they offend a rich person? He's intimidated. He's intimidated.
And
Except
he goes
that
into
he sits in such a weird way. He's so relaxed
awkward,
and kind of
but that
taking
theatrical,
Yeah,
comfortable. Yeah. But it is interesting. With me, he tries to be his most intelligent self.
And with her character also, like she says, make an appointment and drives off. If it was Jimmy,
with
they would
Jimmy,
throw
he's
him
in
in
his
the car.
face, throws him around. Fuck you. It's a totally different attitude with that. And it was a really interesting scene to play with him. He knew that I knew that he knew that I knew. Oh, there's so many interesting things going on, but a very different character than we see with anyone else in the movie.
Hi, good morning, Susan. You seem a very upfront woman to me, and I think that you fight for what you believe. That's your character, fight for what she has, and at the same time, I would like to know, what happens with, those families, of these bad guys, how are called. Are they the collateral victims?
He points at me when he says these bad guys.
Yeah, are they a collateral victim of the society, that we tend to vilify these people?
I think to answer the first part of the question that, what was the first part of the question?
What I wanted to know, we know that the chap is a sociopath, I wanted to know if the lady is the worst one,
I don't think he's a sociopath.
Who's a sociopath?
I don't think he is a sociopath.
What
do you think when you say sociopath? What do you mean?
Not sociopath, but at least a gambler. He
gambler
takes
is very
the gambler.
different. Sociopath has lost
a kind of, that we tend to think
reality.
that, of these guys, but at the very end of the day, these ladies, they knew all the way through, and they decided to stay with the husband.
Well, I think that she knows about the mistresses all along, obviously, but I think that when you've been with somebody that long, there's some kind of negotiation that happens, and I think that she loves him very much, and I think she believes that he loves her, and whatever those little short-time transgressions are with other women might hurt her, but it's not a deal breaker. What the deal breaker is when he involves the daughter, and it was very important for me because he's robbed her of her innocence, he's robbed her of her moral bottom line, and so for me that was the thing that breaks them up. And Nick and I talked about that because I thought it was petty for the other women to be the thing that happens. And so she fights for her daughter, and that's her main. That's what finally rallies her. Does that answer your question?
And I kind of felt
what is happening with the family? I think that those guys don't necessarily think about their families. The Madoff family, the son killed himself, the wife's shattered. I don't know. There's a certain feeling that in business people take liberties, but what he did, if he hadn't been caught short, he would have paid it back. It wasn't like he was stealing money from poor people to make himself richer. I think, is what I understand, he extended himself in such a way, and it just didn't come in fast enough to cover it. So what he did was technically wrong, but he wasn't somebody who... There's a difference between somebody who is taking those kind of liberties and somebody that's doing a Ponzi scheme, or somebody who's selling real estate that doesn't exist, or stealing money from old ladies by, like you see on these TV shows about these people.
Yeah, this just to jump in on everybody says, the character is a sociopath, the tyrant. If you follow the financial logic of this film, this guy builds a business, makes a mistake, a costly mistake, and he has a hole, and he borrows money to cover it up. And then he has somebody who wants to buy his company. And so he takes the money they were going to give him to buy 2 more jets, some big mansions, and uses it to pay back the loan. So Robert and Ellen Miller were supposed to exit this transaction with $525 million profit for themselves. Now he'll have to make do with a lowly $75 million. It's a big hit for the family. Actually, he's not a thief. He does make everyone whole in the end. Does he tell a bunch of lies and timing difference and this and that? Yes, he does. But, as you see at the film, well, not to give too much away, but his business adversary is playing precisely the same games he is, and they're even amused by each other's behavior. So I think, I wouldn't vilify this character on that score. The blood crime of it all is a very different set of
So I don't think she's hanging, I don't think around the dining room table he's explaining to her all of the transactions in his business. I don't think she's that interested really in the ins and outs of what the business, and maybe she assumes there's some kind of stuff going on, but it's not like Bernie Madoff where he really did some horrible things and then everybody went down and and then they were publicly humiliated and the sons were also involved. So I don't think that she's complicit to the ins and outs of the business, nor does she care. But probably she assumes it's, these guys are doing something that maybe is a little bit shady. But I don't think you can equate him to a Bernie Madoff character. But I think it's, what was interesting about the script is that you see what's going on with the family and what the repercussions can be. But Bernie Madoff is a sociopath, and I don't think he is. So they're not the same.
Bien, es un placer estar con nuestros.
A pleasure to be with our invited guests, but so that they can follow their agenda, we've got to finish here. Thank you very much to all of you.